youth, tear upon the core of blasphemy. Follow your prophet, and on evil make a victory. Let our righteousness be a role model to our children, making new generations of believers decently upbringing, with parents as an example. As gems we shape them, fearing only Allah, devoting our lives for Him.
Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum, peace. Welcome to Closing the Gap. I'm your host, Omar Dunlap. We have with us Sheikh Yusuf Estes. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam rahmatullah. Sheikh, we were talking about in a previous episode about the gap between dating, mating, and waiting.
Yes, we did. I remember that.
Right. And we decided that maybe we should take it a little further, because this is a big topic,
right.
And talk about, people living together. I mean, not being married, they're dating, or maybe they're engaged or something like that, but they live together, just as though they were husband or wife, versus people who are married, who get married like a cold start marriage, we'll call it.
Cold start, okay.
Yeah,
cold
just
start.
like, how some people do it in Islam. They get to know each other, just enough to see if the glove fits, and if it works, we get married, So
this is our topic.
This is our topic.
All right, well, okay, let's look at that. First of all, as we discussed in that previous program, this type of thing has been going around for a long time. This is not something people thought up in the last 20 years. It's not something brand new. Ever since the time of Adam and Eve, there have been conflicts even over marriage, and there's been a situation where those who probably shouldn't have been together for whatever reason, maybe too close as relatives, something like that, or their families are against each other. The story of Romeo and Juliet depicts this very situation with Shakespeare's story about the two youth. By the way, these are young teens. Did you know the story of Romeo and Juliet?
Yeah, I read it in high school.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, these are young teens from the Capulets and the Montagues, and these two are basically at war with each other, like a feud between these two families. And it's all about this name business, and that's why the expression rose by any other name would smell as sweet. This is taken from that.
Right.
And there are a number of interesting things in this story, the soliloquy that we hear between them, and this Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? And it's supposed to be such a romantic story, but in reality, if we look at it and compare it to Islam, we would have to say, this is not a good thing.
Right.
Not at all. Because, first of all, they're disobeying their parents. And in Islam, it's very important to obey the parents. This is not an option. This is something as a part of our belief system, actually. When you claim to believe in Allah, then the very next thing after that is the treatment of people, and the first of the people to have rights on you, in fact, are going to be...
Right.
And between them, even, we know it's your mother. And the mothers are the ones who are the most outspoken about marriage, who you will marry, who you won't marry, and so on. So when you have a family like the Capulets and the Montagues, in the story of Romeo and Juliet, who are so opposed to each other, and nothing is going to satisfy these parents of coming together even to talk with each other, much less consider such a preposterous idea of having our youth intermarry here. It's just not going to work. They weren't allowed to even see or talk to each other. That was clear from the story, if you remember.
Right.
And now all of a sudden they're meeting in a clandestine relationship, being intimate with each other, lovers, as they used to call them. It was very clear what he was saying that they were doing, without benefit of clergy, without being married. And here they're doing this thing, and then one of them fakes their death.
Right.
And is so convincing that the other one believes, oh my God, my lover is dead, and takes their own life. And then when the other one comes to and says, oh, my lover has killed themselves, I'll kill myself. And this is called a love story. It's a double suicide.
Right.
A double suicide. Now, according to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, whoever takes their own life will go to hell forever.
Right.
So how do you say that this is a love story? You got a double suicide, you got family feuds going on. It gets even worse after that, obviously, and they're all going to hell. Happy Valentine's Day.
Not a lot of love.
What the heck?
Right.
I don't get it. So it's not acceptable in Islam to go against your family's wishes like this and destroy families, and ultimately it's not going to work out. It won't. Almost none of those affairs, as they call them, work out.
Right.
And one of the things we have a tendency to do is to give a new name for something so it's more palatable, easier to deal with the subject. Right. We don't want to say, for instance, that they are fornicating. Oh, no. They're having a love affair.
Right.
We don't want to say they're committing adultery. No, we want to say that they're having an affair outside of wedlock. What are you talking about here?
Right.
Well, say what you mean.
Right.
Be clear, be straight. And that's better for you.
Right.
When a person doesn't deal with truth, no matter what the subject is, later that will come back and they'll have to deal with it. And it causes some very serious problems down the road. You have to deal with the reality and the truth.
Right.
So I think we've outlined, a little bit of the situation of what people are running into. By telling this story, you can now relate that to real issues that are going on. The children want to go out and do their thing. Now, in some cases today, the parents don't even have a problem with it.
Yeah. It's not uncommon.
Parents say, well, go ahead, when I was young, ha, ha, ha. But now, especially rights. Islam is dealing with the subject of haqq, rights, giving rights to everybody. And how can you give rights to parents, for instance, who have expected you to be married, to have children, grandchildren for them, of course, and you're not giving them their rights? Well, what about the girl? Is she getting her rights? And the boy, is he getting his rights?
Right.
The boy wants to have children. The girl, she would like maybe to have children. But what happens in the situation? The girl becomes pregnant. She's going to have a child. And she says, well, I don't want to be with this guy. That was just for fun. Now what happens? She's got a problem now. Suppose the boy did this. I don't want to be married to you. I'm sorry. You got pregnant. That's your fault.
Right.
It's her fault? I don't think so.
Right.
What I remember about biology, he had a lot to do with this. So, now what about the child? Does the child get any rights out of this? Now, in our country, as you know, there have been a lot of court issues over these things.
Right.
We've had to have laws passed. Various states have different laws regarding children born out of wedlock. Whose name do they get?
Right.
The mother's last name or the father's last name? And then what about blood types? And let's match that up to prove this is the father. And it turns out, even though they lived together, he wasn't the father anyway. This is another guy that comes into the picture.
Right.
And they have shows like Jerry Springer where they bring out people and do blood tests and find out, guess what? That's not his son after all. What? Yeah. Oh, and by the way, that's not your mother either.
Right.
And that's not her father either. It becomes crazy.
Right.
So where do the people get their rights? Now, rights of inheritance are a part of Islam mentioned even in the Quran itself. And how can we give rights of inheritance to people who don't even know who their parents are?
Right.
And that's long before we talk about some other basic rights. Basic rights of having a father help you to go through some of the things. You and I grew up and wanted to have our father with us. Take you fishing, take you camping, feel like, that's my dad.
Right.
Or the mom, this is my mom. She's helping me with this and that, brushing my hair and teaching me this and the little things along the way. How do you get that?
So it seems like what we're saying is that the people who aren't getting married, who are having the same sort of marriage relationship, but without actually committing to each other in a marriage, it seems like it's causing a lot of pain. It's causing a lot of issues.
the argument from the other side would be, yes, but how would we be able to live with a person we don't even know them? You just want me to throw myself out there into the wilderness, basically throw myself into the ocean, and I don't even know how to swim. Why shouldn't I be allowed to go out and get some experience, get some background here, and check out a few guys or check out a few girls, whatever, and then after living with them for a while, okay, this didn't work out, but I could maybe go back to that one, and, well, they're in a new relationship, I'll go break them up, and, you know, that's the kind of thing that you see in these soap operas.
Right.
It's a constant, ongoing thing with these stories of these people in their situations, and the more complicated it is, the more people watch the show. Why? Is because they're thinking, wow, that's even more complicated than my life. You know?
Right.
The solution. The solution comes through understanding people's rights. If you don't understand this subject of rights, you will always have problems. And Islam is telling us the rights in the proper priority, pecking order, if you will, starting with Allah. To believe that Allah has the ultimate right of worship, and that means you're going to follow what He's ordered you to do. And in Islam, it is an order that you must get married before there is intimacy. There cannot be intercourse without marriage. Finished. Khalas.
And that's because it'll cause all of these problems that we're mentioning. I mean, it's not just an arbitrary rule that we're not saying that Islam wants to curtail fun, are we?
What we're saying in this case, to be crystal clear, it doesn't matter if you understand the why or not. This is a command in the Quran for believers. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. When we hear this, Allah is talking to those who have come to the belief. They've come to the faith. They've put their trust in Almighty Allah to the extent He is their God. Not just a king. He's the God. And if He says it, you're going to do it. If He says don't do it, you're not going to do it. He told Adam and Eve, don't eat from the fruit of this tree. And He didn't tell them why, and until this day, nobody knows the why, except that it is a what?
MashaAllah.
It's a what? A test. It was a trial for them to show them something. Allah knew they would eat it, and then He showed them how to repent. We're not saying that a person who commits fornication will automatically go to hell forever. We didn't say that.
Right.
But we're saying it's something very bad. It is a major sin, and it is something that could put somebody in hell unless they make tawbah or repent for it.
MashaAllah. Well, Sheikh, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back, inshallah, so don't go anywhere. You're watching Closing the Gap.
Fearing only Allah, devoting our lives for Him.
You're live on Ask Other Questions, please.
I would like Sheikh to comment on that and to give me how can I answer.
Listening to the adhan and repeating after the muaddin is similarly a highly recommended act of worship.
So how does he reply to her?
This is what we call it an invalid analogy. Because simply there is no comparison between answering 4 out of 5 in any exam and skipping a faridah such as, or a pillar such as the prayer. No one is exempt from praying except women during their menses.
Sister Saud also wants to know if a woman has to cover her feet when she's praying.
The 4 fuqaha, Abu Hanifa, wa Malik, wa Shafi'i, wa Ahmed, the greatest representatives of the fiqh schools, are in agreement. It is haram.
Fearing only Allah, devoting our lives for Him.
Bismillah. Welcome back to Closing the Gap. I'm your host, Omar Dunlap. We have with us, of course, Sheikh Yusuf Estes. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Sheikh, just before the break, we were talking about the gap between, or the difference between the cold start marriage, as we were calling it, and living together before marriage and all of, having basically a marital relationship without actually committing to the other person. I was wondering if we could sort of get Islam's take on this. What does Islam have to say about this whole issue?
There are a number of verses in the Quran dealing with the subject of marriage and what will happen to a person who commits fornication without marriage. Now, there is a distinction in Islam between fornication and adultery. Fornication, by definition that we're talking about here, to commit zina, is when a man or woman have intercourse, consummate this, but they're not married. Adultery, on the other hand, this is a case where a married person is having this intercourse outside of their marriage. In other words, this lady is married to this man, but she's doing this with this other man. Or this man is married to this lady, but he has this intercourse with this other lady. And I chose to say intercourse instead of saying affair or trying to make it sound pretty. It isn't.
Right.
It's a very ugly, filthy thing. It needs to be dealt with from that point of view. It is ugly and it is filthy. It is done in secret. It is done against even the society and the norm. It is not a benefit to anyone. This is personal gratification. It is lust. It is based on desire, and it is from a shaitan, for sure. The shaitan, he wants you to commit these acts of fashawa, this evilness. This is really a bad thing, no matter how you look at it. So Allah tells us to don't even get close to that. That's why we talked before about pornography. We touched on that subject. Stay away from these things because it will lead to that.
Right.
Get away from anything that will bring you closer to that. Until somebody's of the age and the ability to marry, have what's required financially, whatever, then they're taught in Islam to fast. To fast, because fasting reduces these urges. And to continue with their remembrance of Allah, to read the Quran and to pray more to Allah. And avoid these contacts. You notice that one of the things about men and women, we try to separate them in Islam, and one of the reasons is because this getting too close physically can cause a problem.
Right.
People start thinking, people accidentally touching, one thing leading to another, and the next thing you know, married or unmarried, they're into these situations which are very evil, and they wind up going really astray more and more. It gets worse. It never gets better.
Right.
It always gets worse. So Islam is showing us that from the beginning that we need to teach our children what sex is about. So they don't have this thing. Of course, if you don't have any clue, now all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're saying, whoa, I'm really interested in the opposite sex here.
Right.
Well, what do I do about that?
Right.
Well, no, Islam is telling us from the beginning. We have hadiths and Quran itself explaining about the sexes, telling us from the standpoint, you want us to talk about birds and bees? We've got birds and bees mentioned in Quran, as well as ants and other animals and human beings. Everything is all right there. Your biology 101, look to the Quran. You're covered. And you can see what is a proper relationship and why. Why do you get married? Well, it's not just about your urges and your desires, although that's a fulfillment. But at the same time, getting married has a reason, because you want children. That's the main purpose behind marriage, according to Islam, is to have children, have children, have children. And rights, to give the parents rights to be with their children, to raise their children. It's your child, why shouldn't you have the right to raise it? And grandparents' rights are already there in Islam. We didn't have to have a proposition passed and voting on it in the courts in the United States and go to the Supreme Court over it. No, it's right there in Islam. It's clear.
Right.
Grandparents have rights. But what about this? Children's rights, all like it's a new issue. No, this has been in Islam right along, talking even about orphans' rights. There's a surah in the Quran called An-Nisa, the women.
Right.
Filled with giving rights from the very beginning of the chapter of An-Nisa, when Allah is telling us O you who believe, have taqwa for Allah. And it tells us He's the one who created you guys. Have this God-fearing consciousness. You know?
Right.
He's the one who created you guys from a single one, and from Adam, the mate, and from them came many men and many women. And then by the one you demand your mutual rights. You're swearing by Allah. You want to your rights. I want my rights. It's telling you right there. And then look what the next verse is talking about: orphan girls, giving orphan girls their rights. Don't marry these girls with this idea that you're going to take their wealth away from them, because people used to do that.
Right.
They would take, okay, if a girl's 2 or 3 years old, their father dies, a guy comes along. They did this in the Arab desert. I marry this girl. Anybody want to stop me? No. All right. Well, it's not about sex. It was about money.
Right.
It was about wealth, to take all of her father's property,
right.
the inheritance. So that's why in the 3rd verse we find it says, marry other women of your choice. Well, you have to go back and read the other verse. Then what other women are you talking about? And those who want to take Islam out of context, they don't read this part, and they're sure not going to read the verse before it. They just say, marry your women 2, 3, 4. And then they stop.
Right.
They say, or they'll just skip it and say, marry your wives up to 4. They totally twist the meaning here.
Right.
The people back then didn't have any limits. They would marry any woman and take whatever she had. And there was no limit on the number. There was no limit on how they could treat them. They could beat them. They could hurt them. They could sell them. They could trade them. So women had no rights. But now they had limits. You could marry 2, 3, or 4, but that's it, maximum. And they're like, what? The companions of Muhammad had to divorce wives. They didn't go out and marry. They had a divorce. And then it gave you something else. They don't ever tell you this. If you can't treat them fairly, you can only have one.
SubhanAllah.
Now, alhamdulillah, I'm married to a lady from Texas, and she informed me from the beginning, 1 from Texas equals 4 from anywhere else. So alhamdulillah, I don't have any problems with this subject. But that I wanted to demonstrate a little story to you and let you understand, when you see what Islam is teaching you, to bring together a man and a woman for this purpose is a beautiful thing. And you don't have to live together. You don't have to know each other to get married. But you do need to know the principles behind what the person wants, what they're about. My wife and I had the chance to meet each other and talk. I had 2 little daughters at the time. We talked for maybe a half hour, and another meeting for another, half hour or so, and that was it. We decided from that we would like to talk this over as a marriage situation. She came to my home. My father was there. My daughters were there. And while we were talking, my little daughter, she went up to her and she said, "Are you going to be my mommy?"
SubhanAllah.
My wife says, "Well, he hasn't asked me yet." My daughter came running over to me, "Ask her, Daddy." And now I was embarrassed. My dad's laughing, And I said, "Well, do you?" She said, "What?" I said, "I mean, do you want to?" She said, "Want to what?" I said, "Get married." And my dad's over there. He knows I'm embarrassed,
Yeah.
And because, from our culture, Western culture, I didn't know really what to do. She said, "I don't know if it's in Islam or not, but I would like it if you would put your knee on the ground and ask me, really ask me to marry you."
SubhanAllah.
I went, whoa. Now my dad can hardly contain himself. And I did it. I put my knee on the ground. I looked up at her and I said, "Will you marry me?" Whoa. And she didn't answer.
Oh, SubhanAllah.
And I'm thinking, oh my God. I felt like a big lollipop, a big sucker. I'm like, oh no. I sat back down for a second in the chair and I'm thinking, oh man, oh come on. Then she goes like this. "Well, I may be crazy, but yes,
SubhanAllah.
we'll get married."
Alhamdulillah.
And I was so excited, because she accepted and because it seemed right. But then right at that moment, the telephone rang. I went to the phone, I picked it up, and the brother told me, "My wife is ready to go meet this lady for you and introduce you to her so you guys could meet and talk about marriage." Because we had been talking about this for months, that I wanted to meet her. But she and I had met by accident Anyway, on Sunday, and here it is now Thursday, it was in November, I remember that. And subhanAllah, I told him, no, I met her already. He said, what? How? I said, was the store where she worked, we ran into her. He said, oh my God. Whoa. I said, she's actually here right now. No, he said, I'm talking about the lady, the Muslim lady from Texas. I said, yes, she's here. Oh, I don't know about that. I said, we've already talked about, we've agreed to get married. What? I said, yes. And he said, we'll be right over. I said, you'll be what? What do you mean you'll be right over? Because I'm thinking, maybe this is November, maybe next summer we can work some things out.
Right.
They came over from the masjid, these brothers from the masjid, and one of them represented her and explained to her rights. I didn't know she had rights like this. He said, you need to step to the other room, and then you have a chance to read a written proposition from him. He has to write up something that he wants to marry you, and this is what he's going to do. And this is what he's offering you. You have to put it in writing. I said, I do? I've been married before. I didn't have to do all that. This is Islam.
Right.
She has rights. And that's our point, isn't it?
Right.
She has rights. So then he asked her 3 times, are you sure you want to accept what he's offering and be his wife? And each time she acknowledged yes. And then he comes back and has her signature on the paper. He said, no, you guys are married. I said, that's it. That's it. It's a contractual agreement in front of God and witnesses, and you have chosen to marry her, and she's accepted. And you're legitimate to be married to each other, therefore you're now married.
Alhamdulillah, subhanAllah.
It's as simple as that.
Well, Sheikh, unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there. That's all the time we have for today. I would like to thank you for being with us. And for our viewers, don't forget to watch us next time, inshallah. Until then, I'm Omar Dunlap, wishing you peace. Assalamu alaikum.
O youth, tear upon the core of blasphemy. Follow your prophet, and on evil make a victory. Let our righteousness be a role model to our children, making new generations of believers decently upbringing, with parents as an example. As gems we shape them, fearing only Allah, devoting our lives for